The courtroom went dead silent the moment the mayor's wife leaned forward, her diamonds flashing under the harsh lights like tiny blades. This wasn't some parking ticket dispute. This was a $2 million fraud case, and she was losing. With a smile that didn't reach her eyes, she hissed loud enough for every microphone to catch it. "You think your little courtroom scares me? My husband will have your job by Monday." Judge Judy didn't flinch, not once. Instead, she reached beneath her bench and slid a single manila file toward the mayor's wife. It hit the table with a crack sharp enough to slice through the tension. "Open it." The mayor's wife hesitated, then opened it. Her face drained of color. Her diamond-ringed hand started trembling. The posture she strutted in with collapsed in seconds. Because that file wasn't about the fraud case. It was about her. Bank transfers, secret accounts, a name she thought she'd buried 6 years ago, and in 30 seconds, a woman who thought she was untouchable learned she'd just threatened the wrong judge with the right receipts. The echo of the manila file's impact still vibrated through the courtroom when every camera swung toward the mayor's wife, as if the lenses themselves smelled fresh blood in the water. The mayor's wife didn't breathe at first. Her perfectly sculpted face remained frozen, but the tremor climbing up her diamond-ringed fingers betrayed the truth. She hadn't expected this. Not the file, not what was inside it, and certainly not the look on Judge Judy's face, a look that said the game had already changed, and she was the last one to notice. A low murmur rose from the audience benches, the sound like a tide turning. Even the bailiff glanced sideways, sensing the shift in power. Moments ago, she had strutted in as though the courthouse were an extension of City Hall. But now? Now she looked like a woman standing on a trap door she didn't know she'd been dancing over. She snapped the file shut with trembling force. "This is fabricated," she spat. "A stunt, a television tactic. Nothing in here is real." Her attempt at confidence wavered like a candle in a hurricane. Judge Judy didn't blink. "You're welcome to explain which part of it is fabricated." The mayor's wife opened her mouth, then shut it, the words dissolving before they reached air. Her lawyers shifted uncomfortably. One rubbed his forehead, the universal sign for, "We did not prepare for this." The plaintiff, a young contractor with calloused hands and exhaustion carved into his eyes, watched her collapse with stunned disbelief. He had walked in expecting another humiliation. Instead, the universe had finally cracked open. "Your Honor," her lead attorney stammered, "we object to the introduction of—" "There was no introduction," Judy cut in, voice clean and sharp as steel. "The witness requested it. I simply allowed it." The mayor's wife turned slowly, glaring daggers at her former assistant, the same assistant now sitting in the witness area, hands folded tightly in her lap, refusing to meet her stare. Fear radiated off her like heat from pavement. "You little—" "Do not finish that sentence," Judge Judy snapped. A hush dropped instantly. The mayor's wife swallowed hard, the diamonds at her throat catching the lights like warning sparks. Judy continued, her tone cool and professional, the kind that meant danger. "We are going to proceed, and we are going to do it properly." She motioned to the clerk. "Call the first witness." The clerk nodded and stepped toward the side door. The hinges let out a soft groan as it opened, and the room seemed to exhale, as though bracing for whatever would walk through. Judge Judy watched the mayor's wife carefully. Her shoulders tensed, her jaw clenched. Whatever confidence she had left evaporated the moment she saw the silhouette in the doorway. Her voice cracked, the first real crack all day. "No, not them." The witness stepped fully into the light, and the mayor's wife's face drained completely, as if she'd seen a ghost walking into the courtroom. The figure in the doorway hesitated for only a heartbeat, just long enough for the courtroom to sense the weight of whatever truth was about to enter. She stepped inside with the careful, measured steps of someone carrying a secret too dangerous to hold, yet too heavy to set down. The mayor's wife stiffened. Not a twitch, a full-bodied jolt, like someone had yanked an invisible string tied to her spine. The witness was small, soft-spoken, almost unremarkable at first glance. But trauma had a way of etching stories into posture, and hers screamed chapters. It was her former financial assistant, the same woman the mayor's wife fired 2 years ago, without severance, without warning, without mercy. Judge Judy watched the mayor's wife's reaction like a hawk. "State your name for the record," The assistant's voice was quiet but steady. Marissa Dale. Ms. Dale, Judy said, you worked for the defendant for 3 years, correct? Marissa nodded. Yes, Your Honor. And why did your employment end? The question hung in the air. Marissa's eyes flicked briefly to the mayor's wife, who shook her head almost imperceptibly, a silent threat. Marissa inhaled slowly. Because I asked too many questions. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters leaned forward. Judge Judy continued, What kind of questions? Marissa swallowed hard. About the invoices, the transfers, the inconsistencies. The mayor's wife slammed her hand on the table. Lies! She was incompetent and— Sit down! Judy's voice dropped like a hammer. The mayor's wife froze. Marissa continued, her voice trembling but determined. She told me to change dates on invoices, to adjust amounts. When I refused, she told me if I valued my safety, I'd stay quiet. The room went still. Even the air seemed to pause. The mayor's wife's jaw clenched so hard her teeth clicked. This is absurd. She's inventing. Ms. Dale, Judy cut in. Did anyone else witness these requests? The assistant hesitated, her fingers twisted together, knuckles blanching. Then she nodded. Yes. The mayor's wife's head whipped toward her. Don't you dare! Who? Judge Judy pressed. Marissa's breath shook. There were emails, and someone else was asked to do the same. Someone I worked with closely. Judge Judy's tone sharpened. Give the name. Marissa closed her eyes as though summoning courage from someplace deep and battered. Then she said it, a name that cracked through the courtroom like a struck match in a dark room. The mayor's wife's face went white, not pale, not shaken, white, because the name wasn't just familiar, it was dangerous. It was someone who should never have been connected to her again. Judge Judy leaned forward. And what is this person's connection to the defendant? Marissa's voice fell to a whisper. They were hired under her old identity. The moment Marissa uttered the words, her old identity, the temperature in the courtroom didn't just drop, it collapsed. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, the kind of micro-expression only seasoned viewers and terrified defendants ever caught. The mayor's wife, however, felt it. She stiffened like she'd been struck. Old identity? Judy repeated, her voice steady but cold enough to frost glass. Marissa nodded. Yes, Your Honor. She wasn't using the name she has now. Not back then. A tremor rippled through the mayor's wife's polished exterior. Her pearls suddenly felt too heavy, her diamond bracelet slicing cold impressions into her skin. She shot Marissa a look that wasn't just threatening, it was pleading. But pleading wrapped in arrogance never looked like humility. It looked like panic trying to dress itself up. Judge Judy noticed. Boy, did she notice. And the person you mentioned, Judy continued, what role did they play? Marissa clasped her hands tightly. They were a private investigator, hired to track down vendors she claimed had stolen from her. But really, they were used to set up fake invoices and shift blame. The plaintiff frowned, confusion etched across his tired face. Wait, so the fraud didn't start with my company? Marissa shook her head softly. No, this ran deeper. Much deeper. The mayor's wife slammed her palm on the table again, but this time it wasn't anger. It was raw fear shaking its way out. You don't get to talk about that, she snapped. None of that is relevant. Judge Judy's reply sliced the air cleanly. Ma'am, you don't get to decide what's relevant in my courtroom. The mayor's wife froze, a cornered animal in a designer suit. Marissa continued carefully. The investigator kept files, logs, notes. He documented everything because he didn't trust the payments he was receiving. He thought she'd eventually cut him loose and pin everything on him. A hush settled like dust in a room no one dared move in. Judge Judy leaned back slightly, considering the pieces coming together like a puzzle the mayor's wife never wanted solved. And you're certain these records exist? Marissa nodded. I've seen them, before I was fired, before she changed her name and started fresh. The mayor's wife inhaled sharply, too sharply, as though the mask she'd worn for 6 years finally cracked down the middle. Her voice came out thin, shaking at the edges. You have no idea what you're talking about. You weren't supposed to— She stopped herself, too late. Judy raised an eyebrow. Weren't supposed to what? The room leaned in collectively. The mayor's wife swallowed, but the knot didn't move. Her lawyer subtly nudged her ankle under the table in a desperate plea for silence, but she couldn't stop herself. The fear was too loud now. That PI, he's gone. You won't get anything from him. Judy's gaze sharpened. Gone how? The mayor's wife shut her mouth, hard. Marissa looked down at her trembling hands. Your Honor, I submitted something to the court before the hearing. Something I didn't put in my statement because I wasn't sure if it was safe. Judy motioned to the clerk. Bring it forward. A new file, thinner but darker in weight, slid across the bench. Judge Judy opened it. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. And then she looked at the mayor's wife, really looked at her. Judy tapped the folder once and said, Ms. Dale, tell the court why this investigator was hired under the defendant's other name. The mayor's wife visibly swayed, as if a truth she'd buried years ago was clawing its way back to the surface. The clerk set the new folder on the bench with a soft thump, but the sound carried through the courtroom like a body hitting the floor. Judge Judy didn't open it right away. She let the silence coil around the mayor's wife's shoulders, squeezing tighter with each passing second. When she finally flipped the cover back, the fluorescent lights glinted off the contents, printed emails, bank screenshots, signatures all too carefully looped. Exhibit C. The defendant blinked rapidly, as if hoping the papers might blur into something harmless. No such luck. Ms. Dale, Judy said, eyes scanning the documents, these signatures match the defendant's handwriting. Precisely. Marissa nodded, throat visibly tightening. Yes, Your Honor. She used two signatures at the time, one under her legal name and one under her previous identity. The mayor's wife's composure cracked like porcelain left out in the cold. That is not my handwriting. Anyone could have— Ma'am, Judy cut in sharply, you're a terrible liar. Gasps rippled through the audience, cameras whirring like hungry insects catching every angle. Judy lifted a page, holding it up between two fingers. This contract, dated 6 years ago, bears your old name, the same name attached to the offshore accounts we've already glimpsed. The mayor's wife's lawyers shifted uncomfortably, their faces flattening into that universal attorney expression. We may be doomed. Judge Judy turned to the plaintiff. Mr. Harlan, please describe what happened when the payments stopped. The young contractor rose slowly. His voice carried the exhaustion of a man who'd been fighting shadows for years. I lost 4 employees in 1 month, had to sell my truck. The delays almost cost me my house. He paused, eyes flicking toward the mayor's wife. And the whole time, her office kept insisting it was my accounting error. That landed heavy. Even the cameras seemed to zoom closer. Judge Judy looked back to the defendant. Would you like to explain why funds meant for this contractor were rerouted into an account with your former name on it? I don't know. She swallowed hard. I've never had another name. Judy's eyebrow rose slowly. Are you sure you want to die on that hill? The mayor's wife's breathing quickened. Her diamonds weren't sparkling anymore. They looked like shackles. Judy tapped the exhibit with one manicured finger. Because Exhibit C contains a state-issued name change, court-stamped, signed 6 years ago. The room reeled. Her lawyer's eyes widened. Marissa closed her own, as if bracing for fallout. The plaintiff froze mid-breath. But the mayor's wife— She stared at the document as though it were written in a language she had hoped would never be spoken again. That's not mine, she whispered. It's your signature, Judy replied coolly. Your birth date, your social security number, your photograph even. The defendant's mouth opened, but no sound followed. Her entire facade— pearls, posture, privilege, crumpled like wet paper. Judge Judy leaned forward, voice soft but lethal. Ma'am, do you want to try that lie again? The mayor's wife stood abruptly, shaking her head, shaking her whole body. I never had a— She stopped. Her voice vanished, her expression hollowed. The mayor's wife slammed both palms onto the table and screamed, I do not have a maiden name! The courtroom froze, because denying something so fundamental meant only one thing. She wasn't just hiding money. She was hiding who she was. Her scream still hung in the air, trembling through the courtroom like a cracked bell that refused to stop ringing. Judge Judy didn't move, didn't blink, didn't flinch. She simply watched the mayor's wife, watched the panic crawl across her face, watched the realization dawn on her lawyers that the pretense was no longer sustainable, watched every glittering diamond on the woman's body lose all its shine. "Sit down," Judy finally said. Her tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried the weight of an order carved into stone. The mayor's wife's legs buckled as she lowered herself back into her chair, her breath coming in fast, shallow bursts. The courtroom was silent except for the faint rustling of someone shifting nervously in the gallery. The plaintiff stared, confused and stunned. Marissa stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Even the bailiff seemed frozen in place. Judge Judy lifted the name change document from Exhibit C and slid it closer to her. "Every person in this room has a maiden name," she said calmly, "unless they were never born with the name they claim to have now." The defendant's jaw tightened, but her eyes, wild, darting, unfocused, betrayed her. Judy pressed. "Would you like to explain why a legal name change was filed under the name Elena Marrow 6 years ago? With your photo, your identifying information, your signature." The mayor's wife shook her head violently. "You don't understand." "Then enlighten me." Her throat bobbed as she struggled to swallow. She glanced at her lawyers, but they refused to rescue her. They kept their eyes on the desk. One quietly closed his briefcase as if preparing for a silent evacuation. Judge Judy continued, "The court needs to know who you were, because right now we're seeing who you are, someone willing to lie about their own name." A ripple of tension swelled through the room. "I had reasons," the mayor's wife whispered finally, voice cracking. "Things you don't know about, things I had to run from." Judy leaned back, studying her. "We all have pasts, but pasts don't usually involve fake invoices, offshore accounts, rerouted funds, and hiring investigators under fraudulent aliases." The mayor's wife squeezed her eyes shut, tears threatening to spill, not from remorse, but from the terror of being cornered. "I changed my name because I had to," she said softly, "because Elena Marrow couldn't survive in this world." Judy nodded slowly. "And yet Elena Marrow is still very much alive on these documents." The woman's hands trembled so violently her rings clinked together like tiny wind chimes. "You have no idea what that life was like." "Then tell us," Judy pressed. "Tell us why Elena Marrow disappeared." But the mayor's wife said nothing. Silence swallowed her whole. Her lawyers shared a look, one that said she's about to break, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Judge Judy closed the file gently, but the sound seemed to echo like a steel door shutting. "We're taking a 10-minute recess," she announced. "But before we do," she fixed the mayor's wife with a stare sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Don't go far. We haven't addressed the offshore accounts yet." The mayor's wife flinched exactly like a guilty person does when the truth hits too close. As she stood on unsteady legs, thinking she could flee to the hallway, Judge Judy added without looking away, "And bring her back immediately after recess. We'll be reviewing the 2019 ledger next." The mayor's wife whispered, unaware her mic was still live. "No, not that one." When the recess ended, the courtroom didn't settle back into order. It tightened like a rope being pulled at both ends. The mayor's wife returned to her seat with the unsteady grace of someone pretending not to be falling apart. Her foundation was freshly applied, but makeup couldn't disguise fear. Her eyes were swollen at the edges, her posture fragile, every movement betraying cracks she could no longer hide. Judge Judy re-entered with the file already in her hand. "We're resuming," she announced. "Bring forward the financial analysis." The bailiff delivered a thick packet bound by a black clip. Inside it, charts, wire transfer confirmations, and a trail of digital footprints that didn't care about status, wealth, or who someone married. The mayor's wife's breath hitched as Judy flipped to the first page. "Ms. Marrow." She froze. The name slipped out naturally, instinctively, because that's who this woman truly was, Elena Marrow, the identity she abandoned but never escaped. The defendant recoiled as though slapped. Judy didn't apologize. Funds from city disbursement schedules were transferred into accounts in the Caymans, numbered under both your current legal name and your previous one. "That's not possible," she whispered. Judy raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting these banks forged your information?" Her silence answered everything. The plaintiff leaned forward slightly. His expression wasn't angry. It was something deeper, sadder. The realization of just how much manipulation had been weaponized against him, how small he had been made to feel by someone who had everything. Judge Judy continued, "We have matching timestamps showing that on 3 occasions funds left the city's development account and appeared in yours within 48 hours. The mayor's wife shook her head, frantic now. "I didn't do that. I didn't move anything. Someone must have hacked—" "Ma'am," Judy interrupted, "you really should stop talking." A few people in the audience snickered under their breath. The defendant whipped her head toward them, eyes blazing, but she no longer had the power to intimidate. Power without credibility is just noise. Judy turned to Marissa. "Ms. Dale, you said earlier that others were asked to adjust records?" "Yes, Your Honor," Marissa replied, "and those adjustments usually aligned with the offshore transfers." The mayor's wife snapped, "This is a setup. You're all conspiring against me because of who I'm married to." Judge Judy let out a dry, unimpressed breath. "If you believe your marriage grants you immunity, you have a very uncomfortable 20 minutes ahead." The defendant slumped, eyes darting wildly. She looked like a cornered fox realizing the hounds weren't stopping. Judy motioned toward the clerk. "Bring me the 2019 ledger." A hush fell, the kind of hush that sinks into bones. The mayor's wife's composure shattered like glass. Her lips parted, her pupils widened. She mouthed something small, something desperate. Then, her microphone picked it up. "No, not that one." Gasps shot through the room like sparks catching dry wood. Judge Judy's head lifted sharply. "Oh," she said, voice chilling in its calm. "So there is something in the 2019 ledger you don't want us to see." The mayor's wife's face drained of all color. The bailiff stepped forward carrying a thick, worn ledger, and the mayor's wife whispered one word under her breath, barely audible, but enough to shake the room. "Please, no." The 2019 ledger hit the table with a heavy thud, not loud but final, like the sound of a door closing behind someone who will never walk back out the same. Judge Judy didn't open it right away. She let the moment settle, let the mayor's wife feel the gravity of the book, her own hands once filled with numbers, lies, and shortcuts, disguised as accounting. The courtroom held its breath. Judy finally flipped open the cover. Dust rose off the first page, dancing through the harsh white lights like ghosts refusing to stay buried. "Ms. Marrow," Judy said, the name slicing through the air like a scalpel. "This ledger is handwritten." The mayor's wife's eyes widened. "And unless someone forged your handwriting on 2 separate continents and somehow adopted your exact slanted cursive," Judy continued, "we have a problem." A muffled snicker echoed from the gallery. The mayor's wife turned sharply, ready to lash out, but the fear in her eyes choked the words before they were born. Judge Judy turned the ledger toward the camera. Rows of numbers, notations, and circled dates filled the page. Neat at first, then sloppy. The handwriting told its own story, confidence degrading into panic. "Explain this," Judy ordered. The defendant swallowed hard. I don't know what that is." "Of course you do," Judy shot back. "This ledger documents city project payments, all of which conveniently align with the plaintiff's missing funds and the deposits into your offshore accounts." The plaintiff leaned forward, jaw tightening. "So while I was losing everything, she was—" "Please don't finish that sentence," Judy said gently. "I'll do it for you." She tapped 3 entries with her pen, here, here, and here. Each tap echoed like a drumbeat. Judy looked directly at the mayor's wife. "You rerouted his payments to accounts you controlled 3 different times, and you documented it in your own handwriting because you thought no one would ever see this ledger again." The defendant's lips quivered. "I didn't reroute anything. I only signed off what my staff advised. "Ma'am," Judy said, "the numbers do not lie." "But you do. Poorly." The audience let out a collective exhale they didn't realize they'd been holding. Then Judy flipped another page, and the mayor's wife jolted upright as if slapped. It was worse, because this page showed not just rerouted payments, but withdrawals. Personal withdrawals, dates and times, cross-referenced with her travel records, her signature, not once, but 17 times. The mayor's wife's voice broke into a whisper. "Where did you get that?" Judy didn't look up. "You left it behind when you changed your name." The defendant's entire body sagged. For a moment she looked decades older, stripped of entitlement, stripped of pretense, stripped of the armor she thought money could buy. "This ledger," Judy continued, "isn't just sloppy bookkeeping. It's a confession in ink." She closed it with a soft snap that somehow sounded like the crack of a gavel. "Call the next witness." The clerk nodded, heading toward the side door again. The hinges groaned. A figure stepped into the doorway. A city employee badge glinted on his chest. He looked terrified. The mayor's wife inhaled sharply, too sharply. "He wasn't supposed to be here," she whispered. Judge Judy eyed the trembling staffer. "Sir, please come forward and tell the court what you know." And the mayor's wife sagged in her chair, whispering a broken breath. "This is all falling apart." He walked forward like a man approaching a cliff he'd been trying not to see for years, each step small, timid, but inevitable. The city hall staffer looked young, but worry had carved years into his face. His badge caught the fluorescent lights, glinting with every trembling breath he took. He clutched a stack of papers against his chest as if they were both shield and burden. Judge Judy nodded to the bailiff. "Swear him in." Once seated, the staffer swallowed hard. "My name is Daniel Harper. I work in municipal finance." The mayor's wife's gaze narrowed to slits. "You lying coward," she hissed, barely audible, but the mic caught every syllable. Judy didn't look at her. "Mr. Harper, you will speak freely. No one in this courtroom will intimidate you. Understood?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good. Then tell us what you came here to say." Daniel's fingers trembled against the papers. There were requests from her. He nodded in the mayor's wife's direction without daring to look at her. Requests that didn't make sense. "What kind of requests?" Judy asked. He exhaled shakily. "Transfers, manual overrides, emergency reimbursements for repairs that never happened, and instructions to reroute funds to accounts that weren't tied to any official city department." Murmurs erupted. The cameras whirred closer. The mayor's wife's voice cracked. "He's making this up. He was a temporary hire." "I've been there 6 years," Daniel said quietly, eyes dark with something like shame. "You used me because I was new enough to be afraid, and loyal enough to obey." Judge Judy pressed gently but firmly. "So you followed her orders?" He nodded. "At first, until I realized the money wasn't being used for city purposes." "And what made you realize that?" Judy asked. Daniel's throat tightened. "The names on the accounts. They didn't match any city officials. They matched her." Judy turned her head slightly. "Her current name?" "No," he whispered. "Her old one." The mayor's wife inhaled sharply, the sound sharp enough to cut through the silence. "And how did you learn what her old name was?" Judy asked. Daniel wet his lips. "She slipped once during a meeting. A vendor questioned paperwork and she snapped. She yelled, 'Elena didn't make mistakes.'" The room froze. Daniel's eyes darted up, haunted. "And that's when I learned Elena Merrow wasn't a different person. It was her." The mayor's wife's shoulders rose, trembling. Panic pulsed through her like visible electricity. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Mr. Harper, did you bring evidence?" Daniel nodded and placed the papers on the bench. "These are internal memos, requests she sent, and notes I kept because I was scared. I didn't know who to trust." Judy scanned the top sheet. Her expression tightened, a minute shift, but unmistakable. "Mr. Harper," she said, voice dropping to a grave tone, "was the mayor aware of any of these transfers?" Daniel's face drained. He hesitated, his breath caught. The mayor's wife stared at him, eyes wide, silently begging him not to say the words already forming in his throat. "Judge," he whispered. Every camera zoomed in. "The mayor didn't just know." The mayor's wife shook her head violently. "Daniel, don't—" "He helped her," Daniel said louder this time. "He approved the transfers." A wave of gasps burst through the courtroom. The mayor's wife slammed her hands onto the table. "You traitor!" Judge Judy's gavel cracked through the noise. Judy pointed her gavel at the mayor's wife. "You just implicated your own husband with that outburst." The mayor's wife froze, realizing she had, and every camera captured it. The moment the words, "he helped her," left Daniel's lips, the air in the courtroom didn't just shift, it detonated. Gasps collided, reporters scrambled for better angles, and every camera lunged forward as if hungry for the chaos unraveling in real time. Even the judge's bench seemed to shiver beneath the weight of what had just been spoken. The mayor's wife sat frozen, mouth slightly open, eyes flickering like a glitching screen. She looked unreal, almost wax-like, caught between fear and denial, and something far more primal, the terror of losing the shield she had relied on more than she ever admitted. "Order," Judge Judy commanded, pounding her gavel once. The echo snapped the room back into a tense, breathless silence. Judy turned her gaze to Daniel. "Mr. Harper, are you telling this court that the mayor of this city knowingly approved fraudulent financial transfers?" Daniel nodded, his voice cracking. "Yes, Your Honor." "You're certain?" "Yes." The mayor's wife erupted. "He's lying. He's lying to save his own skin. My husband doesn't know anything about this. He never approved anything. This is a political hit job." "Stop talking," her attorney hissed under his breath. But she couldn't. Panic had severed the last threads of control she had left. Judge Judy's stare cut through the noise like a spotlight from above. "Ma'am, another outburst and I will have you removed." The mayor's wife gripped the table's edge, knuckles bone white. "My husband is the mayor," she said, voice trembling. "He would never risk his career for something so small." Judge Judy arched a brow. "Small? You believe $2 million of taxpayer and contract funds is small?" She flinched. "That's not what I—" Judy held up a hand. "Enough. Sit down." The defendant collapsed into her chair, shaking, lips pressed into a thin, furious line. Daniel swallowed. "Your Honor, there's more. The mayor was involved in reviewing communications about these transfers." Judy frowned. "What communications?" He hesitated. "Emails, texts, memos, the ones she sent." The mayor's wife let out a strangled sound. "Those were deleted. They were all deleted." Judy turned slowly toward her. "Ma'am, how would you know that?" She froze. Too late. Her attorney closed his eyes like a man watching a slow-motion car crash. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Let me get this straight. You're claiming the emails and messages you allegedly didn't send were deleted?" The gallery murmured. The mayor's wife realized her mistake too late. I just assumed. I meant someone probably—" "No," Judy said, shaking her head gently. "You meant exactly what you said." Then she raised a hand toward the projection monitor beside her bench. A blue login screen flickered on. "Mr. Harper," Judy said, "those communications you referenced, were copies ever sent to your department server?" He nodded. "And do we have access to them?" "Yes, Your Honor. They were forwarded this morning." The mayor's wife's entire body went still in a way that no actress, no liar, no polished socialite could fake. Judy tapped her gavel softly. "Then let's take a look." The screen glowed brighter, illuminating the mayor's wife's pale face like a spotlight catching a fleeing criminal. The first message loaded. The mayor's wife gasped, because on the screen was her own name, followed by a sentence she never thought anyone would see again. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the projection screen brightened, casting cold blue light across every stunned face, especially hers. The mayor's wife stared at the glowing monitor like it was a guillotine blade suspended inches above her neck. Her jaw slackened. Her hand drifted instinctively toward her throat, clutching at the diamonds that suddenly felt more like a noose than an accessory. On the screen, in crisp digital clarity, sat the message header. From L. Marrow to Office of Municipal Finance. Subject: Transfer Authorization. The room inhaled as one. Judge Judy read aloud, slowly, deliberately, each word carved from stone. "Push the payment to Altair Holdings. We'll reclassify the contractor invoice later. Just make it disappear. L." The mayor's wife squeezed her eyes shut as if that could erase the glowing evidence. It couldn't. Judy turned to her. "Would you like to explain this?" That isn't, I didn't write." She stumbled over her own excuses like a person tripping over broken glass. Judy raised her hand. "Before you embarrass yourself, let's continue." A second message loaded. This one was worse. "If he keeps pushing, make sure he understands what happens to people who challenge city leadership. Tell him the mayor can make problems vanish. Don't put my name on anything." Gasps exploded. Reporters' fingers hammered their keys. The plaintiff slumped slightly, stunned by the cruelty of the words directed at him. The The mayor's wife reached out toward the screen as if she could physically stop the truth from spreading. "I never said that. That message is doctored, fragmented, false." Judge Judy cut her off. "The metadata confirms it was sent from your home router at 11:42 p.m. from a device registered to your old name." The defendant's mouth hung open. Her panic had shape now, sharp, jagged, frantic. "Someone hacked me. Someone set me up." Judy wasn't swayed. "We haven't even reached the worst one." The projection flicked to the third message. The room stiffened. This one wasn't about rerouting funds. It was personal. "Judy's courtroom is a powerless TV circus. She won't touch me. My husband won't allow it." The mayor's wife's face drained of color. For the first time today, her arrogance didn't just crack. It shattered. Judge Judy's lips pressed into a thin line. "A powerless TV circus?" Her voice was calm. Too calm. The mayor's wife stammered, I didn't mean, it was a joke, just frustration. I didn't." Judy leaned forward. "Ma'am, you've spent the better part of this hearing trying to intimidate my staff, my witnesses, and this plaintiff. But you might consider the possibility that the person you should be most afraid of is yourself." Then she tapped the monitor. "Next message." The clerk hesitated. "Your Honor, this one was originally redacted." "Unredacted." A bar of solid black vanished from the screen like a curtain rising. Beneath it appeared a name tied to her false identity, her offshore accounts, and her old life. The mayor's wife's lips parted, trembling. No, that file was destroyed." Judge Judy didn't blink. "Ms. Marrow," she said calmly, "care to explain why this message was sent to your private investigator?" The name on the screen glowed brighter than the rest, as if the courtroom lights themselves were leaning in to stare at it. "Recipient, A. Keaton, Private Investigations." The room fell into a dense, suffocating silence. You could hear fabric shift, breath hitch, even the soft mechanical hum of the ceiling lights overhead. The mayor's wife didn't move. Couldn't. Her entire body locked in place, eyes glued to the name she had spent 6 years burying. The muscles in her jaw fluttered in tiny spasms as her pulse pounded visibly beneath the skin of her neck. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. "Ms. Marrow, who is A. Keaton?" The mayor's wife swallowed, but the movement stuck halfway down. She looked at her lawyer, at the floor, anywhere but at the judge. He was just a contractor, an external consultant." Judy lifted a brow. "A consultant you instructed to fabricate invoices and reroute funds?" The defendant's throat tightened. "No." "Then why," Judy continued, "does this message show you approving payments to him under both your current name and your former name?" Her breath quickened. Because that was years ago. It wasn't." Judge Judy tapped her pen. "Ms. Dale testified that this private investigator kept notes, logs, evidence of your actions." The mayor's wife's composure faltered like a collapsing scaffolding. I don't know anything about logs." Judy turned her head slightly. "Really? Because this message says otherwise," she read aloud. "If your notes ever surface, remember who signs your checks. I will not hesitate to disappear you just like I disappeared Elena M." A collective gasp erupted through the courtroom. The mayor's wife's eyes snapped open wide, tears welling with a terror no amount of diamonds could hide. "That's not what I meant. I didn't mean disappear like that," she cried. I was scared. He was threatening to expose." Judge Judy raised a hand. "Are you saying Mr. Keaton threatened you?" The defendant froze, not a twitch. Then, "No," she whispered. "He didn't threaten me. He warned me." The room shifted. Even the plaintiff leaned forward. Judy's voice lowered. "Warned you about what?" The mayor's wife's breath hitched, shaky and thin. Her eyes drifted to the blinking cursor on the screen, like it was pointing at her conscience. "Your Honor, he found something," she whispered. "Something from my past, from before Elena Marrow. He said it would ruin me." Judy watched her unravel one thread at a time. "And what did you do?" she asked softly. The mayor's wife's hands trembled so violently her rings chimed together. Her voice cracked open. "I pushed him," she whispered. The courtroom froze. "I pushed him too hard, too fast, too far. He was old. He was sick." Her breath trembled. He had a heart attack the night I demanded he hide the transfers. He died in his office. A shiver rippled through the gallery. Judge Judy's voice went quiet. And you blamed yourself. Tears welled, spilling down her cheek in trembling lines. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time all day, she didn't look arrogant or furious. She looked broken. Yes, she breathed. It was my fault. I've been running ever since. Her lawyer touched her arm, but she didn't react. She couldn't. Judge Judy sat back, watching Payne do what the law hadn't yet accomplished, reveal the truth behind the diamonds. The mayor's wife lifted her eyes, hollow and defeated. He died because of me, she whispered, and everything I've done since that night was just to outrun the guilt. The room went still. Judge Judy leaned forward. Then it's time, she said gently, for you to stop running. Her confession didn't explode. It exhaled, fragile and devastating, settling over the courtroom like a soft layer of ash after a long-burning fire finally gives out. For the first time that day, the mayor's wife didn't look like the glossy woman from the news headlines or the polished political spouse who glided through charity galas. She looked stripped bare, human, haunted. She dabbed at her cheeks, but the tears kept coming, carving thin, shimmering paths through her foundation. Her diamonds, those hard, perfect symbols of wealth, seemed to shrink against the tender shaking of her hands. Judge Judy didn't speak. She didn't need to. Silence, right now, was the most powerful witness in the room. The plaintiff watched her with an expression caught between anger and something much softer, the quiet understanding of another person's breaking point. The mayor's wife inhaled shakily. When he died, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I thought it would go away if I changed my name, my hair, my life. She gave a small, broken laugh. Turns out guilt doesn't care what name you choose. Her voice thinned to a whisper. I told myself I deserved a fresh start, that I had worked hard, that I had rebuilt myself honestly. But then the money got tight, the pressure grew, and one shortcut turned into another and another. She blinked up at the ceiling as though searching for forgiveness in the lights, and soon the lies were the only truth I had left. She swallowed hard. I wasn't stealing to get rich, Your Honor. I was stealing to stay afloat, to keep the life I'd built after ruining someone else's. I couldn't admit I was still that frightened girl, making desperate choices in a tiny office somewhere. Judy's tone softened, not sympathetic, but steady, grounded. Running from yourself is a marathon no one wins. The mayor's wife nodded, trembling. I know, but once you start lying, it becomes the only language you know. I lied to my husband, to my staff, to my own reflection. She pressed her hand over her mouth as a sob slipped out. I lied so long, I forgot how to tell the truth without it hurting. The courtroom, strangely, understood that line. Even the reporter stopped typing for a moment. I didn't want to drag the mayor into this, she whispered, but he asked questions, he wanted explanations, and instead of telling him the truth, I pulled him in. Little favors, little approvals. I told myself he'd never get caught. I convinced myself I was protecting our future. But really, I was protecting the past that could ruin me. Her voice cracked, thin as tissue. I wasn't a monster. I was ashamed. And shame makes monsters out of anyone. Judge Judy leaned forward, hands folded, not judging, assessing, understanding the psychology, not excusing the choices. So, Judy said softly, every lie, every scheme, every fraud, all of it was built on one night you never faced. The mayor's wife nodded slowly. Judy's gaze held steady. And what do you think accountability looks like now? The mayor's wife looked around the room, at the plaintiff she hurt, the assistant she intimidated, the staffer she manipulated, the cameras that once adored her but now demanded truth. Her voice, when it came, was barely there. I think it looks like, she exhaled. Finally telling the whole truth, she lifted her eyes toward Judge Judy, raw and exposed. Ask me whatever you need. I won't run anymore. A hush fell. A heavy, expectant hush. Judy nodded once. Then let's begin. Start, Judy said, by telling this court what else you forged, besides invoices. The mayor's wife's breath caught, because there was something else, something worse. And Judy saw it instantly. Her inhale was sharp enough to be heard across the room, the kind of breath people take when they're standing right on the edge of a truth they never meant to face. Judge Judy waited. The mayor's wife didn't. She crumpled. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, mentally, in that quiet, devastating way where the spine softens and the eyes lose their last flicker of defiance. Her shoulders rounded inwards, her hand hovering over her mouth as though trying to keep the remaining lies from slipping out. "You said," Judy repeated gently, "there's something else you forged. What was it?" For a long moment, the mayor's wife said nothing. You could hear her thinking, hear the grinding of guilt and self-preservation in a fierce private war. Her rings clicked against each other as her fingers trembled, and she finally whispered, "Letters." Judy's eyes narrowed slightly. "Letters?" She nodded. "Recommendation letters, sign-off letters from inspectors, authorization letters from City Hall." Her voice grew smaller. Most of them were never signed by the people whose names appeared on them. The plaintiff's face hardened, a mix of disbelief and sorrow. "You forged city approvals?" She looked at him, and for the first time, her gaze held no hostility, no pretense, only regret. "I told myself it would speed things up, that it would help the city avoid delays, but really, I just didn't want anyone questioning the projects connected to my husband's office." "And the invoices?" Judy pressed. She nodded. "Those too. And the signatures?" A beat, then quietly, "All of them." The courtroom erupted in whispers, shock, fury, vindication. Even the bailiff shifted, jaw clenching in controlled disapproval. Judge Judy lifted a hand, and silence snapped back into place. The mayor's wife continued, voice cracking as she peeled back layers she had buried under diamonds and city privilege. "I forged until I lost track of what was real. I lied until the truth felt smaller than the lies I had built. I hurt people because it was easier than facing what I had already done." Her eyes flicked to Marissa, the assistant she had fired without mercy. "I ruined your career," she whispered. "You tried to help me. I punished you for it." Marissa swallowed, unsure how to respond. The mayor's wife turned to Daniel, the staffer she manipulated. "I used your fear against you. I'm sorry." Daniel blinked, stunned, conflicted, wounded. Then she looked at the plaintiff, the man whose life had been collateral damage in her shame spiral. "You didn't deserve any of this." He held her gaze, searching her for honesty. For the first time, he found some. Judge Judy took a breath, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Ms. Merrow," she said, "you've built an entire life on a foundation of fear, shortcuts, and the belief that accountability wouldn't dare knock on your door." The mayor's wife nodded, tears falling freely. "I know. And yet," Judy continued, "you're still here, finally facing it." The defendant closed her eyes, not in defeat, but in surrender. "Your Honor," she said softly, "I don't expect forgiveness, not from anyone in this room. I can't keep pretending. Not after all this." Her voice cracked. "I'm so tired." And the courtroom believed her. Judge Judy leaned forward, hands clasped. "Ms. Merrow," she said, "before I issue my ruling, you have the right to make a final statement." The mayor's wife stiffened slightly, the tiniest spark of terror returning. A final statement, her last chance to speak before her entire life was judged. Judy's voice dropped to a near whisper, carrying more weight than any gavel strike. "What do you want this court, and the world, to know, before I rule?" The mayor's wife lifted her head, tears shimmering, breath trembling, ready to say the words she'd avoided for years. She rose slowly, like someone lifting themselves out of wreckage rather than out of a chair, every movement hesitant, heavy, and painfully human. The mayor's wife stood with both hands pressed flat on the table, as though steadying herself against a storm only she could feel. The diamonds she'd flaunted that morning looked dull under the courtroom lights, as though even they were ashamed to shine. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, raw, and stripped of every layer of armor she'd worn her entire adult life. "I spent years trying to control how the world saw me," she began. "Perfect wife, perfect leader's partner, perfect everything. Because if people thought I was perfect, Maybe I could forget the parts of me that weren't. Her eyes drifted toward the screen, still frozen with her damning messages. Instead, I built a life out of lies, lies I convinced myself were small, that they didn't hurt anyone, that they were necessary. She shook her head, tears gathering again. But every lie I told became another brick in a wall I couldn't see over anymore. I didn't just hide my past, I buried myself under it. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing. She inhaled shakily. My husband. He doesn't even know who I really am. I told myself I was protecting him from the truth. But the truth is, I dragged him into a nightmare he didn't ask for. Her voice cracked. He trusted me, and I used that trust to hide behind. She turned to Marissa, the assistant who once feared her. You didn't deserve what I did to you. You were loyal. You tried to help, and I repaid you with fear. Marissa's eyes glistened. Then she looked to Daniel, the young staffer trembling in his seat. I stole years from you, years you'll never get back. Daniel blinked hard, jaw trembling. Finally, she faced the plaintiff. He braced himself, unsure what was coming. You worked, you struggled, you built something with your bare hands, and I took from you because I thought I could fix my mistakes without anyone noticing. Her chin quivered. I forgot you were a person. I'm sorry. The plaintiff nodded once, nothing dramatic, but deeply human. Judge Judy watched her carefully, measuring sincerity against shame, truth against desperation. I can't ask for forgiveness, the mayor's wife said, wiping tears that refused to stop. I don't think I deserve it, but I can tell the truth now, all of it, and I can accept whatever comes next. She straightened, the slightest bit, as if rediscovering a spine long bent by fear. I didn't come here today to be humiliated. I came to win. I thought I could scare, manipulate, or outsmart everyone in this room. She swallowed. But now, I just want to stop lying. I want to stop running. And if this is where it ends for me, then at least I finally told the truth. She sat slowly, a tear sliding down her cheek and falling onto the wood table like a tiny final confession. Judge Judy's expression didn't soften, but it settled. The courtroom waited, suspended in breathless anticipation. Judge Judy lifted her gavel, eyes fixed on the trembling woman before her. Then let's bring this to a close, she said. It's time for my ruling. The room went silent, the kind of silence that comes before a verdict that will change everything.